Allow me to reset the room, as I like to call it now, in social media space. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your patience and for your commitment to be here in the great discourse at the first ever Noor Conference 2021, the quest for good governance, quest for the future. And a lot have been said, and I would like them, all the points before, to be tied up to one thing, that the world is getting more complex. We are in the evolution of humankind where the technological leap has spurred the fastest progress ever in the history of mankind. And yet we are facing also greater threats, from pandemic to climate crisis to wars and famine. So without further ado, as promised, a very, very respected and esteemed keynote address speaker, I would like to present to you Emeritus Professor Datuk Dr. Osman Bakar. Prof, over to you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya mursalin Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Yang saya muliakan saudara moderator, penganjur program, dan seterusnya para hadirin sekalian. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi dan salam sejahtera. First of all, let me thank the organizers of this conference, the Noor Conference organization, and the Muslim Youth Movement of Malaysia, ABIM, for kindly inviting me to this very, very important, significant event, since it's going to talk about a very, very important topic, a topic that means a lot of things to all of us. Let me begin my presentation with this statement. If by governance we mean all things about governing human organizations, be it a nation, a community, a regional community, a world body like the United Nations, or even local bodies and organizations, then we can appreciate how vast the subject of governance is. And I'm using the word here, using the word human organization, in the sense used 600 years, about 600 years ago, by Ibn Khaldun, the father of modern sociology, and also the founder of science of civilization, Ilm-ul-Umran, which also may be translated as science of culture. And in this vast science, certainly the vast that we have come across under the name of sociology and civilization, Ibn Khaldun talked about governance. Governance was an important topic in his book, The Muqaddimah. What is important to be noted is that his discussion of governance was in the context of the study of civilization. What this means is that governance may be described as a civilizational issue. So, inshallah, I will try in this about 30 minutes or so for me to discuss this topic. Please go to my first slide. Hello, my first slide, please. Second, next slide, please. Yes. Precisely because of the multi-dimensional and all-embracing nature of the issue of civilization, I have chosen to emphasize the word civilizational, ketamadunan, isu ketamadunan, civilizational issue. Now, to say that governance is a civilizational issue means that it is, first of all, a universal issue. And by universal, I mean an issue that has been confronted by all human civilizations at all times in the history of human being. And in fact, every organized community, every organized society has to deal in some way with the issue of governance. But universal also means that there is not just one experience of governance. There are many governance systems, and yes, there are common issues that are faced by all societies precisely because this is related to human qualities, human nature, and human nature has not changed over the centuries, has remained the same. At least I will talk more about the connection between the universal nature, the human quality, and the issue of governance. So that's what I mean by being a universal issue. So, and to see the multi-dimensionality of the issue of governance is enough to, of course, to look, first of all, governance is a political issue. In fact, in the past, this is the core idea of governance with which people associate. That is the political. And there's been different political system, as made clear by the language that we use. For example, say in Malay, Bahasa Malaysia, we associate governance with pemerintahan and with kerajaan. And in fact, that's the popular thing. In other words, it's quite clear that governance is a political issue. And of course, kerajaan also means about the system, the governance system, which is the pentadbiran. And this is important to be noted. The word pentadbiran comes from the word tadbir, and tadbir comes from the Arabic word. And finally, when you use the word tadbir, it refers back to God, who is the al-mudabbir, who is the governor, who is the ruler, the manager of his vast cosmic kingdom. In fact, it is important to note that in the Islamic perspective, of course, that there's also the dimension called the theology of governance. Now, we can also see the governance is also an economic business issue. It has that dimension. And since I'm talking here about basically the application of Islam to the issue of the governance, just to appreciate the economic nature of issue governance. Now, we are reminded by classical Islamic thought that the most fundamental unit of governance is household governance. What the Muslim philosophers like Al-Farabi, like Ibn Sina, they use the word tarbil al-manzil, which literally means the household governance. And there is also the name, they use for economics. So in other words, economics, the fundamental unit of economic life is governance of the household, home governance. In other words, if we take care, if good governance of our own household prevail, then the economy of the country or the society will be in better shape, inshallah. So just to point out to you all that governance is an economic issue. Of course, in the case of Ibn Khaldun, all right, we can see that the taxation system, which has to do with economics, was very, very important to his science of civilization. I'm sure you know about this. The former American president, President Ronald Reagan, used to speak highly of Ibn Khaldun. In fact, when I heard it live on American TV at that time, I was in the United States doing my PhD. I was watching TV, watching Reagan delivering his speech with several Malaysian friends, and we saw him quoting Ibn Khaldun approvingly. And after the speech, I told to Malaysian friends, look what Ronald Reagan has done. Ronald Reagan has turned Ibn Khaldun into a Republican. And yes, a good Republican, because that's why he approved this quotation very approvingly. But the point is, but of course, since he's a good Republican, so it means that low taxation, because the context of the American debate is that between the Republicans and the Democrats, there is perennial debate on taxation system. Somehow, there is the ideas of the philosophy of taxation proposed by Ibn Khaldun appeal to the Republic. Now, governance is also a military issue. We know very well, of course, all the big military complexes in the United States. Also, governance has to appear. In other words, Ministry of Defense in every country has to deal with the issue of governance. And not to be left out, especially from the Islamic perspective, there is the religious dimension of governance, the ethical, moral dimension of governance. In fact, it's a very, very important dimension, because Islam refused to separate ethics and morality from governance, or for that matter, from any other human endeavor. And again, we refer to the taxation system. We have the concept of religious tax in the Sharia, which is religious. Well, religious, partly religious and also partly social. But the point is, the Islam as the last religion finds it appropriate to introduce religious tax, a very, very fundamental pillar of Muslim society. Now, this just my initial remarks, just to emphasize the civilizational nature of the issue of governance. Well, let me say a few words about what I call the raison d'être of the human condition, meaning the rationale of human existence, the justification of human existence. I mentioned here three main points. First is a guardianship of planet Earth. In other words, it is in Islamic theology that God has appointed human beings as Khilafah, as the vicegerents on earth, or when you do it, guardianship. Of course, other religions like Christianity use the word stewardship, but the point is the same meaning is implied. In other words, God has appointed human being to protect, to be the protector of planet Earth, to administer the earth, to govern the earth. Of course, in accordance with the way guided by Allah, by God. So this is a concept of guardianship, in other words, planetary governance. Later I will say more about this planetary governance. But what I'm saying now is to emphasize that the governance of the planet Earth is a very important issue now and in future and in the near future. We are not talking about it because of the problem of the climate change, of global warming and so on. But the point is, somehow our planetary consciousness has been brought closer and closer with each other. Now, the other thing is the creation of the human civilizational order. So there's a very important reason that the basis, the rationale of the of civilization, all right, or governance. Why is governance needed? Governance is needed. Good governance is needed. It's only because we have to create a moral order, a civilizational order. Just as God has created a natural order, and a perfect natural order, so he's expecting human beings to create a counterpart to that natural order in the form of civilizational order. So harmony between natural and civilizational orders is the demand, in a sense, that is the goal of human existence. Next issue, next slide, please. Yes. Now, since I've been requested to talk about Islam and good governance, let me briefly deal with several very important points about, I would say, the principles of good governance. But before that, let me say this, all right? You know, there are 4 conditions of regarding governance that we need to take note of. We can have, first of all, we can have the situation in which the system of governance is bad, is poor, and the governors, the al-mudabbirun, are also poor. In a poor condition. So you have that. Poor system, poor human beings, poor the human governance. We have that situation. Or the second condition, we can have good system, but poor managers, poor governance. So we have that kind of situation. And the third situation is we have good governance or a good system, but good governance, but poor system. And the best, of course, the fourth condition is we have good system and good administrators, a good governance. And Islam, of course, insists on both. At least in principle, in theory, Islam insists on having good system and good managers and governance. So here, that's why I emphasize that there are many points to talk about good governance, but let me talk about select the most important ones. And from this list of points, from the Islamic perspective regarding governance, then we can see here it is a combination of system and the human quality. Both are emphasized here. First, wisdom and knowledge as basis. In other words, good governance demands knowledge and wisdom from the governors, from the administrators. Therefore, it's a question of human quality. And since Islam calls itself as the religion of knowledge, so Islam insists on the knowledge-based governance, wisdom-based governance. So, and this is something which is not static, which keeps on. It's a dynamic kind of thing that needs to be improved, progressively improved from time to time, because, as the emphasized by our moderator, we are now in a world in which is it's getting more and more complex, and but also more problematic and so on. So at no other time that we need really wisdom and knowledge. And if our system of education cannot deliver the people endowed with knowledge and wisdom, then we are not going to have a good governance. Now, the second point here is power sharing and ethical exercise of power and authority. This principle applies quite generally across the board. In other words, this applies to all societies, not just to Muslim societies. But here, I'm actually my point here. They are all universal in nature. It's all applicable to any society. Every human society needs these principles. Now, power sharing, and of course, Islam emphasized that power is a gift from is trust. Power and authority is a trust from God, and therefore human beings who have been entrusted with this power and authority should exercise this principle of sharing, and of course the exercise of power should be based on ethical, that's the importance of ethics, and therefore here is a combination, or in a sense, a combination of both human quality and the goodness of the system. So, in other words, one of the requirements of the good system is the idea of sharing in society. Most of all, the sharing of power and authority, and of course, to make sure that ethics guides our in a sense the way we govern, the way we organize things. Now, the third point, the third principle is trustworthiness. It goes back to trust, and it's important to note that when Allah in a sense talks about the appointment of human beings, of Bani Adam, or the children of Adam, the human family, as governors and as Khalifa, as Khalifa, then the word used is trust, amanah. Allah has given that trust to human beings, and we should not break that trust, the trust that God has given to us. So this applies also to governance in human society, and of course there should be mutual trust between the governors and the governed, and between the rulers and the ruled. In other words, this very, very important question of trustworthiness. The question is justice. We cannot have good governance without justice. Principle of justice needs to be observed. It is the spirit that will permeate into every part of the societal body. So I cannot speak dwell at length with each of these ideas because of time, but just to emphasize that justice is very, very important, and our well-known philosopher, Professor Said Makin Atas, defined justice as having the knowledge to put things in their proper places. That's justice in the wide sense of the word, but here we talk about justice in different domains of life: economic justice, social justice, and political justice, and so on. Now the other one is inclusiveness. Inclusiveness. To be inclusive, this is very important. Islam emphasizes inclusiveness and not exclusiveness. So contrary to what many Muslims are believing and what they are doing, all right, because they point, many of them really having this kind of spirit of exclusiveness, to exclude people, whereas Islam was revealed by God to bring the spirit of inclusiveness. If only people care, Muslims, people care to look at, say, for example, the 6 articles of faith. They are universal and inclusive. Look at the 5 pillars of Islam. It's inclusive again. So, in other words, compared, I dare to say that compared to all the other religions, Islam has been more inclusive. Yeah? It's more inclusive, and that spirit, that theological, even at the level of theology, that inclusiveness has going to have a very, very important impact on society. And now the other one, very, very important, I would like to bring this up. It is not a new issue, an old issue, but I would like to call upon Muslims especially to rethink about this social political institution called ulil amri. Ulil amri. Minkum. It's in the Quran. I'll show you afterward the verse. Now, but before, of course, this concept of ulil amri, minkum is referring to the people in authority, those who have been entrusted with power and authority, and therefore all the other members, the citizens of the country, they have to obey this ulil amri, but there have been abuses, precisely because those people have tried to make a kind of this unconditional obedience. So I'll show. Can you show the next slide first? Yes. Now, please refer to the Quran, Surah An-Nisa, Surah 4, Chapter 4, verses 58-59. I think there's a need to look at the two verses together, because in my opinion, this is one of the best Quranic principles of governance and democracy. All right. The next slide, just want to go to the translation, please, of that verse, the two verses together. Yes, in this verse, Inna Allah ya'murukum an tu'addul amanati ila ahliha wa idha hakamtum ba'da an-nasi an tahkumu bil adli inna Allah ni'ma ya'izukum bihi inna Allah kana sami'an basira. Allah commands you to render back your trust. That's the word trust here, amana. To render back your trust to those to whom they are due. In other words, they qualified. Ila ahliha. So they deserve the trust because they are ahliha. In other words, they are the people who have the knowledge, the experts to that. And not Jonas, please. And when you judge between man and man, then judge with justice. Verily, how excellent is the teaching which He gives you. For Allah is He who hears and sees all things. Now, this is a very important verse concerning governance, and it brings here the idea of amana, trust, justice. There's a need to judge people with justice. And the next one, yes, the next slide. I just want to read it. Yes. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasula wa ulil amri minkum fa in tanaza'tum fi shay'in farudduhu ila Allah wa Rasul in kuntum tu'minuna billahi wal yawmil akhir dhalika khairun wa ahsanu ta'wila. Wa ahsanu ta'wila is very, very important there. Now, all you who believe, obey Allah, obey the Messenger, and those charged with authority among you. Ulil amri minkum. Now, this is very important because this is the principle also underlying the democracy. In other words, the people are going to represent the community, the society. They are the ulil amri minkum. They are elected from among them. Although the Quran does not mention the mechanism, but the point is, if we differ anything, because it's bound in a democratic system, that different opinions and so on. But the point is, what is the mechanism that Islam recommends in order to resolve disputes? You see, if you differ in anything among yourselves, refer it to God and His Messenger, meaning refer to the Quran and refer to the Prophet's example. Now, if you do believe in Allah and the last day, now this is the best suitable for final determination and the best decision to be made. وَأَحْسَنُ تَأْوِيلًا. Of course, you want to comment on that to provide a tafsir of that. I mean, it's very, very rich indeed what it means. So go back to the earlier slides for me to continue. I think the next two slides, the previous two slides, please. Yes, another one. To the principles, another one before that. Yes. So I would, in other words, it is good if Muslims today go back to that concept of ulil amri, the ulil amri is also related, very, very closely related to what in Islamic political refers to ahlul hal wal aqdi. If you can translate that one in experts in untying and binding. Whenever I look at this phrase, ahlul halli wal aqdi, I always remember of Parliament. I think the members of Parliament should belong to the ahlul halli wal aqdi, literally meaning untying and binding. If I want to use the word Malay, penghurai dan penyimpul, hurai dan simpul. Kerjanya hurai dan simpul. Hurai means to use your intellect to analyze. Hurai means analysis, to analyze all the problem. But there's no point just analyzing the problem without the solution. Therefore, we need the penyimpul. All right, we need the penyimpul, the binding, and I think we need members of parliament, senators who belong to this kind of thing, inshallah. Now, the other one is the value-based technology. This is very, very important, value-based technology. It's not just simply technology, but value-based. I think if we look at modern technology, one of the often and best critics against modern technology is because it is somehow detached from the human values, the ethical values, the moral values. It's more like a technology just simply based on power, is based on wealth. In other words, technology has turned into something which seeks to monopolize power and wealth. It widens the gulf between the poor and the rich. What is the purpose of technology? As a student of philosophy of technology, I don't say that. I mean, the technology is supposed to be the instrument of human being, is to serve the needs of human being, to create justice in human being. But there are a lot of critics that can be leveled against this technology. All right. Now, if I were to just look at here, it's a very, very important example. We claim that, of course, we are very proud. We take pride in living in the digital age. In other words, what digital technology has done to the progress of human beings in the areas of many different areas. But I want to illustrate the dual nature of this issue of technology. Just take digital technology. Now, when the Putrajaya came into existence, and in the new administrative capital in Putrajaya, Dr. Mahathir at that time wanted to turn Putrajaya into center of e-governance, to make Kuala Lumpur, Putrajaya, the first Muslim capital to go all out, full and on e-governance. Yes, we did. In other words, Malaysia was the first Muslim country, and certainly ahead of many other countries as far as e-governance was concerned. E-governance did many wonders. It improved, it facilitated governance in a way that we had not seen before. We, in a sense, removed the paper, kind of the paper governance. We go for paperless governance. Yeah, but that's only one side. Now it is the same e-governance that was later used to facilitate the opposite, not efficient government, but corruption. In other words, corruption, the worst corruption in our history, that happened in the light of the e-governance, the digital technology. So digital technology, while it helps certainly vastly improve the performance of governance, but it was also used as a mean as an instrument for the things that go against the very principles of justice and governance. Now, this is a very important point to remember, to take note. There is an old proverb saying that, a thief who stole things in the dark will only can manage to get a certain amount of things. Yeah. A thief can only steal a certain amount of things. But you give a thief a lamp or a torchlight, he will be able to steal more. Right? Now, in modern times, when the thieves are better educated, when thieves are equipped with a more sophisticated technology, you can expect the kind of how much they'll be able to get from society. So I think it is important for universities, colleges and universities, especially those which teach technology. We want to teach the consumption of technology, creation of technology. They should also teach philosophy of technology that is value-based, based on ethics. In other words, human beings will always be human beings. Technology cannot erase the animal nature in man, the nature, such things as greed, arrogance. No technology can remove this from human nature. And this can only be erased by spirituality, by good ethics. And this is important to be noted when we talk about the new horizon of good governance. There's always something. Modern, in other words, one thing about the contemporary man, as far as technology is concerned, they easily forget about the human nature. Okay, the next slide, please. Yes. In a sense, these several points that I have here in this slide is basically to emphasize the significance of ulil amri minkum. That is those charged with authority from among you, as far as governance is concerned. So the first point here, I repeat, this is one of the Quranic principles of governance and democracy, one of the most relevant as far as I'm concerned. Number two, now this verses talk about an enlightened, dynamic, and action-oriented group emerging from dissolving into the community. That is this group, the ulil amri minkum. So in other words, it talks about obedience, of course. If you remember just now the verses, or obedience to God, obedience to professor. Obedience is an important aspect of good governance. Now, come to the day, we have to think about it in what way that good governance has got to do with the qualities of loyalty and obedience. Because precisely because governance also brings up the issue of leadership and followership. We need good leaders. We also need good followership. Islam insists both. We have good leaders, but poor followers, it doesn't help. But we have good followers, but poor leaders, also doesn't help. So we need both. We need both good leadership, and good followership. Certainly, I would like to say here about obedience. There are three types of obedience. Three types of obedience. First, you have the ignorant obedience. Ignorant obedience. It's not based on knowledge. Just based on something else, based on other consideration. You follow. Leaders are to follow. You follow because what I call this ignorant obedience. The other one is hypocritical obedience. Now, hypocritical obedience. This is not good. This is in fact could become a dangerous social cancer if that becomes a culture, this, in other words, it's not based upon knowledge, it's not based upon spiritual values. What we need is, of course, what Islam talks about obedience is enlightened obedience. In other words, it's based on knowledge. There's a reason why obedience is made necessary in certain circumstances. Now, the other one is commitment to consultative democracy and dialogue culture. Quite clearly, if you reflect on the two verses that I just quoted of the Quran, precisely, yeah, in our the concept of ulil amri minkum, commitment to consultative democracy and dialogue culture. If we have differences, refer to the Quran and the Prophet's Sunnah. And another one, of course, is loyalty to the philosophical framework of governance that is at once theological, universal, and inclusive. This is meant to be addressed to non-Muslims. I think it is important that Muslims have to take lead. That although we refer to the Quran and the Prophet Sunnah, as far as we are concerned, this is universal in nature. You cannot have something more universal than what is being offered by the Quran. All right, next slide, please. Hello? I think I come to the next one. Next one. Yes. Let's get the last slide of my presentation. The future of governance. And I've been given a topic, the subtitle of my presentation is about the new horizon. And certainly, I share that sentiment. In other words, if we understand Islam, if we understand the teachings of Islam in their entirety, if we understand the Quran in really understand, and we understand the Prophet's Sunnah, then I think there's something that Islam can offer to the whole of humankind in facing the present and future challenges. But many people laugh when we see that, because people look at the present conditions of the Muslims. We are in bad shape. How can we play that role? How can we in that sense? Well, I make the difference between yes. The point is there is a lot of wisdom. It's wisdom in the Quran, and that wisdom is not just meant for Muslims. If we invite others to this wisdom, we also inviting the Muslims themselves, who are now many of whom do not understand about their own Quran. But what's important is, for those who know well the message in the Quran, then we should, and they feel that that knowledge should be shared with the rest of humanity. So what's important to be noted is that first, there's a wider and deeper interrelatedness of global affairs. The global community, the human community is going to be more interrelated in their human affairs. That looks like that is the plan of God's plan. From Adam and Eve, from the first human couple, the first human family, humanity spreads throughout the earth. And it spread to all corners of the globe. Now, in a sense, the human members of the human family are brought back. So in other words, the consciousness that we belong to a single family, the human family, dawn upon our consciousness in a more marked way than ever before. And we are seeing that change in our lifetime. We are seeing that the global affairs of the human community are getting deeper and deeper, again, more and more interrelated. And therefore, that interrelatedness needs the concept of unity. We are more and more aware of our diversity, But there is no point knowing about diversity without knowing how to bring that diversity into a unity. Without unity, we will just be, in a sense, floating around without any sense of direction. Now, and therefore, and of course, the second point is a needed reforms for the world bodies, which means governance. All bodies at all levels, local, district, national, regional, and of course, including the United Nations itself, having existed for some time, certainly reform is needed at the lowest as well as the highest level of human organization. And where do we get the ideas for this reform? Is it by trial and error, by experimenting? No, I think yeah, people can continue with that. But the point is, especially for Muslims, why should we waste the wisdom that has been given? The Quran, the Quran is the last scripture. Islam is the last religion. That's what the Quran claims, which means that there's not going to be any more new religion, any more new scripture, a new secular law. We don't have that. Also the last. But are we applying the wisdom to that to solve the current problems? Now, the point is the shaping of the idea of planetary governance. The issue of climate change, global warming is a good example of the current ecological disorder. Reminds us of the idea that humanity needs better ideas, better practices to deal with the condition of our planet. In other, the planetary health is deteriorating, not better. It's getting worse. And this is our only home. Spiritual leaders like the Dalai Lama talks about the earth as our only home. Pope Francis talks about our earth as our only home. And for us, for the Muslim, that idea about man's only planetary home is in the Quran itself. We have been placed on planet Earth for a period of time, but we cannot move to anywhere else. Of course, people can try, but as far as the universe is concerned, no. I mean, this is our home. But we have governed this planet rather poorly. And finally, the growing importance of integral ecology. This is my own interest in several years. In other words, it's not simply to talk about ecology, ecological health of our human society, of our planet Earth, but integral ecology. What I mean by integral ecology is that it's a worldview in which we look at our different levels of environment. To start with, the biophysical environment, which is under threat. Then you have the built environment, the kind of cities we'll build. In other words, the kind of architectural philosophy, something that's not in conformity with the idea of ecological health. And of course, the cultural, this cultural environment. The kind of human ecology. So integral ecology means now the problems that we face in the world today is such that we cannot just think in compartmentalization, but we need to look at cultural ecology, cultural environment, which is shaped by human behavior, by our way of life, and then the built environment and the biophysical environment must be looked at from an integrated point of view. And for that, we need the message of Tawhid. The principle of Tawhid will remain the important principle that can somehow integrate these three different environments into one whole. And but it's a great challenge because in terms of knowledge, in terms of attitudes, and so on, we do not reach the level required yet. But inshallah, may Allah guide us to the right path. May Allah guide us to how to deal with the present challenges to our planetary health. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.